To a failure, my wife laughed, raising her champagne glass while her rich friends giggled around the table. To my dear husband, who still takes the bus to work at 35. The whole table burst into laughter. Her friend Vanessa nearly choked on her wine. Marcus, the tall guy in the $10,000 watch who had been touching my wife's shoulder all evening, smirked and said, "Claire, honey, you deserve so much better." I just smiled, lifted my glass of water, and clinked it against hers. To failures, I said quietly. What Claire didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the restaurant we were sitting in belonged to a holding company, and that holding company belonged to me. The bus I took every morning stopped 2 blocks from a private office where I had spent the last 2 years preparing every single document for our divorce. And Marcus, the man whose hand was currently resting on my wife's lower back, worked for me. He just didn't know it yet. Stay with me until the end, because the moment Claire realized what she had actually lost in front of those same friends at that same table is something I will never forget. And honestly, neither will she. My name is Daniel. I'm 35 years old, and for 11 years I was married to a woman I would have died for. I met Claire when we were both 22. Back then, I really was broke. I was fixing computers in a tiny repair shop, eating instant noodles, saving every dollar. Claire was a waitress at the cafe next door. She used to sneak me free coffee and sit with me during her breaks. One day, she told me, drawing little circles on my palm with her finger, "You're going to build something huge, Danny. I can feel it, and I'll be right there next to you." I believed her. God, I believed her. We got married in a courthouse with 12 guests and a cake her mother baked. Claire wore a white sundress from a discount store, and I swear to you, no bride in history has ever looked more beautiful. That night she cried and said, "I don't need rich, I just need you. Remember that line. It matters later." For the first 5 years, we were a team. I started a small IT company out of our garage. Claire handled the phones. We failed twice. Completely failed. Sold, the car to pay rent, failed. And both times Claire held my face in her hands and said, "Again, we try again." The third time worked. By year 6, the company was making real money. By year 8, serious money. I bought us a beautiful house. Claire quit her job. And that's when I made the biggest mistake of my life. I decided to protect her from stress. Claire had watched her parents destroy each other over money her whole childhood, so I told her a simplified version of our finances. She knew we were comfortable. She knew I did okay. She never knew that I had quietly grown the company into a group of businesses, restaurants, real estate, a logistics firm. I told myself I'd surprise her someday. Big reveal, keys to a beach house, the whole thing. Life had a different reveal planned. The change didn't happen overnight. Betrayal never does. It seeps in slowly, like water under a door. In year 9, Claire reconnected with her old college friends. Vanessa married to a plastic surgeon. Rebecca divorced twice, an alimony queen. And their whole circle of glossy, loud, designer-wrapped people. Claire started coming home later, started comparing. Vanessa's husband bought her a Cartier bracelet just because it was Tuesday. Rebecca's ex pays for her apartment in the city, her ex, Daniel. Then the comments turned to me. "Are you seriously wearing that jacket to dinner? Can you not talk about computers tonight? It's embarrassing. Why do you even take the bus? God, sometimes I look at you and wonder where the man I married went. Funny. I was wondering the exact same thing about her, but I still loved her, so I kept making excuses. She's just going through a phase. She's insecure around her friends. It will pass. Then came October 17th, a Tuesday. I remember because it was the day my wife died, not literally. The Claire I married, the girl with the free coffee and the discount store dress, that woman died on October 17th, and the stranger wearing her face made one very big mistake. She forgot her phone on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I swear on everything, I wasn't that guy. The phone lit up while I was making dinner, and a message preview flashed on the screen. One line, 11 words that split my life into before and after. Can't wait for Thursday, wear the red one, he'll never know. The sender's name was saved in her phone as Nail Salon. I stood there with a spatula in my hand, pasta boiling over behind me, reading those 11 words over and over. And you know what's strange? I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I felt everything inside me go very, very quiet, like a house a second after the power goes out. I turned off the stove. I set the table. And when Claire came home, I kissed her cheek and asked about her day. Because in that quiet, a thought had already formed. Cold, clear, patient. Not yet. First I find out everything. Then she loses everything. That Thursday, Claire told me she was having a girls' night with Vanessa. She wore the red dress. She kissed my cheek at the door and said, "Don't wait up, honey." I waited exactly 20 minutes. Then I followed her. I know how that sounds, but when the person you built your whole life around starts lying to your face, you stop caring how things sound. She didn't go to Vanessa's. Her car pulled into the parking lot of a boutique hotel downtown, the kind with a doorman and a rooftop bar. And there, under the golden lights of the entrance, my wife walked into the arms of a man I recognized immediately. Marcus, the watch guy from her friend circle. The one who always found a reason to stand a little too close to her at parties. He kissed her right there on the street, one hand in her hair, and she laughed against his mouth the way she used to laugh against mine. I sat in my car across the street and watched my marriage end in real time. And then I did something I still can't fully explain. I took out my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed one word. Everything. That was the plan. That single word. She was going to lose everything, and she was going to hand it to me herself, smiling, with witnesses. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a ghost in my own marriage. I hugged her. I laughed at her jokes. I carried her shopping bags. And I documented everything. That's the first thing you learn when the quiet rage settles in. Emotion is loud, but evidence is silent. I hired a licensed private investigator, the best one in the state, a former federal agent named Whitaker, who charged by the hour and never smiled. Within a month, Whitaker handed me a folder that was worse than anything I'd imagined. Because here's the twist, and I need you to sit down for this one. The affair wasn't the betrayal. The affair was just the surface. Marcus wasn't some rich admirer. Marcus was broke. His watch was rented. His car was leased under a company that was 3 months from bankruptcy. And in the folder, Whitaker had printed pages and pages of messages between Marcus and my wife. They weren't love letters. They were plans. My plans, actually. Plans for my money. He has to have more than he shows, Marcus wrote. Guys like him always hide assets. You file for divorce, we get a forensic accountant, you take half of everything, and then it's just you and me, baby. And my wife, the woman who once said she didn't need Rich, she just needed me, replied with 3 words that I will hear in my head until the day I die. He'll never fight. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to gut me. She had a timeline. She had already consulted a divorce attorney, a shark named Feldman, and she was waiting. Get this, she was waiting for our 11th anniversary, because Feldman told her that longer marriages get better settlements. She was going to smile through our anniversary dinner, let me toast to us, and file the papers the following Monday. When I read that, something in me didn't break. It crystallized. Fine, I thought. You want to play the long game, Claire? Let me show you what patience really looks like. Here's what nobody tells you about revenge. Real revenge isn't loud. It doesn't scream or slash tires. Real revenge is a spreadsheet. It's a lawyer on retainer. It's 2 years of pretending to be exactly the man she thought I was. Small, tired, harmless, while every asset she was counting on quietly slipped through her fingers like sand. I hired my own attorney, a quiet woman named Grace Okafor, who specialized in high-asset divorces and had a reputation for never losing. The first thing Grace asked me was, "How much does your wife know about your holdings?" I said, "Almost nothing." Grace smiled for the first and only time in the 2 years I worked with her and said, "Then this will be the easiest case of my career. But you have to do everything I say, and you cannot rush. Rule 1, nothing illegal. We would not hide assets after the fact. That's fraud, and judges destroy people for it. Instead, we would use the truth, structured properly." It turned out that years earlier, back when the company was still small, my late grandfather's estate had seeded my first business through a family trust. Grace's team traced every dollar, and dollar by dollar, document by document, they proved that the core of my business empire was separate property, protected, untouchable, never commingled with marital funds. The house, the cars, the joint accounts, those were marital. The empire was not. Claire didn't know the empire existed, so she never asked. And I was under no obligation to volunteer what she never once in 11 years cared enough to ask about. Second, the businesses. I restructured the group under a holding company with a boring, invisible name, Ashline Group. New management layer, professional CEO, my name off the storefronts. To the outside world, I became exactly what Claire told her friends I was, a mid-level IT guy. I even asked my own company for a formal salary, a modest one, paid on the books. I sold my nice car and started taking the bus. And here's the poetry. The bus stop was 2 blocks from Ashline's private office. Every morning my wife watched me leave the house, looking like a failure. And every morning I walked into a boardroom that controlled more money than everyone at her dinner parties combined. Third, Marcus. Oh, Marcus, this is my favorite part. Marcus's failing consulting firm was drowning. So, one of Ashline's subsidiaries, a company Marcus had no idea was connected to me, threw him a lifeline. A big consulting contract, generous, flattering, with one small detail buried in the paperwork, an ironclad ethics and disclosure clause, and full audit rights over his firm's books. Marcus signed it in a day. He didn't even have a lawyer read it. He celebrated by taking my wife to Aspen. I know because I approved his invoice for the trip. He billed it to us as a business expense. Fraud in writing with his signature on it. I put it in the folder. The folder was getting thick. The hardest part wasn't the paperwork. The hardest part was the acting. 730 days of sleeping next to a person who was actively plotting to destroy me. 730 days of good morning, honey. There were nights I sat in the bathroom at 3 a.m. just breathing, telling myself, not yet, not yet, not yet. And Claire made it easier, honestly, because with every month she got crueler. Once she found my modest pay stub, the decoy salary, snooping through my desk, and instead of leaving me, she laughed about it at brunch with her friends. I know because Vanessa's husband, the surgeon, told me later. She passed your pay stub around the table, man, like a joke. Even her lover's plan was on pause, because Feldman the shark had run a standard asset search on me and come back to Claire with disappointing news. Your husband has almost nothing worth taking. A salary, half a house. Are you sure you want to divorce him now? Maybe wait, see if he inherits something. So Claire waited. She stayed married to a man she despised, cheating on him every Thursday, because leaving wasn't profitable yet. Let that sink in. And me? I smiled and paid the bills and crossed off the days. The night everything detonated was our anniversary dinner, the one you heard at the beginning. Claire had insisted on that specific restaurant, upscale, golden light, her whole crowd invited. Vanessa, Rebecca, Marcus, and the rest. I found out later why she chose it. Feldman had finally greenlit the divorce, and she wanted one last public performance. The suffering wife, the embarrassing husband, witnesses for the story she would tell in court. So she stood up, raised her glass, and gave that toast. To a failure, to my dear husband, who still takes the bus at 35. And they laughed, and I toasted to failures. And then I set down my glass, reached into my jacket, and placed a thick envelope on the white tablecloth. Since we're celebrating honesty, I said, I have an anniversary gift too. Claire's smile flickered. She loved gifts. She tore it open, expecting jewelry. Inside were divorce papers filed that morning, and on top of them, a single photograph. Her and Marcus at the hotel entrance, his hand in her hair. The table went so silent I could hear the ice melting in the glasses. Daniel, she whispered, and her voice was suddenly the old Claire's voice, small and scared. What is this? That's Thursday, I said. You know Thursdays, nail salon. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. Okay, buddy. I don't know what you think you saw. Sit down, Marcus, I said, and something in my voice made him actually sit. You have a bigger problem than me. You billed your trips with my wife to your client as business expenses. Your client's auditors found all of it. The fraud referral goes out Monday morning. His face went gray. How would you... Who told you what my client... And this was the moment I had waited 2 years for. I looked at him, then at Claire, then at the whole frozen table, and said, Because I am your client, Marcus. The consulting contract that's been keeping your company alive belongs to Ashline Group. I turned to Claire. And Ashline Group, sweetheart, is mine, the company, the logistics firm, the buildings on 5th, this restaurant we're sitting in, all of it, built while you were toasting to failures. I watched it happen in her eyes, in real time, the recalculation, The 2 years of Thursday hotels, of pay stub jokes, of waiting for a bigger settlement, all of it collapsing into one horrifying realization. She had spent 2 years humiliating a man who could have given her everything, and she had signed away her claim to all of it through her own greed and her own lawyer's paperwork trail. "Daniel," she said, and now she was crying, reaching for my hand across the table. "Danny, wait, we can talk. I made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. I love you. You know I love you." "No," I said gently, and I mean it, gently, because rage had left me somewhere in those 2 years, and what remained was just finished. "You loved him when you thought he was rich. You loved me when you thought I'd be rich. You've never loved anyone in this room, Claire, including yourself." I stood up, put enough cash on the table to cover everyone's dinner, because I could, and said the last words I ever spoke to her as a husband. "Happy anniversary. The waiter will bring dessert. It's on the house, my house." And I walked out past the golden lights, and for the first time in 2 years, the quiet inside me felt like peace instead of war. The divorce took 4 months. Grace was surgical. Claire's own message history, subpoenaed legally, showed premeditated financial scheming, and her affair with Marcus, funded partly through fraudulent expenses, poisoned every claim she made. She got exactly what the law entitled her to, half of the marital assets she knew about, half a house she couldn't afford to maintain alone, which she had to sell, half of the joint accounts. No alimony. Her own attorney's records showed she had deliberately delayed the divorce for financial gain, and the judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was not amused. Marcus lost his firm to the fraud case and settled to avoid prosecution by surrendering basically everything he had, which, as we established, was mostly rented anyway. He left the state. Claire's glossy friends evaporated within a month. That crowd doesn't do downgrades. Vanessa blocked her. Rebecca gave interviews about her at brunch. Last I heard, Claire is working as a hostess at a restaurant across town. Not one of mine. I checked. And me? I finally took the big reveal I'd been saving all those years, the beach house keys, and I used them. I live by the water now. I still take the bus sometimes, honestly, out of habit, and because the view from the window reminds me of the 2 years that taught me the most expensive lesson of my life. The person who truly loves you doesn't need to see your bank account to respect you. And the person who needs to see it never loved you at all. About a year after the divorce, a letter arrived at my office. Claire's handwriting, 4 pages. Apologies, memories, the courthouse wedding, the free coffee. The real me got lost, Danny, but she's still in here. I read it twice. Then I put it in the folder, the thick one, right on top of the photo from the hotel, and closed the drawer. Some doors you don't slam. You just lock them quietly and never think about the key again. So now I'm asking you, the people watching this, was 2 years of silence too cold? Should I have confronted her the night I saw that message and saved myself 730 days of pretending? Or was watching her toast to failures in a restaurant she didn't know I owned worth every single one of those days? Tell me in the comments, would you have waited or would you have walked away that first night? And if a story like this ever happened to you, I read every comment, and trust me, after this video, I know I'm not the only one. If you made it to the end, subscribe, because next week I'm telling the story of a man whose wife's family tried to write him out of his own company, and what he found in his father-in-law's safe changed 4 lives forever. Until then, stay quiet, stay patient, and remember, the ember that burns silently burns longest.